Welcome to the VO School podcast, dedicated to the art, craft and business of voiceover. Each week builds upon the last to give you a comprehensive understanding of a career in VO. My name's Jamie Muffett. I'm a full-time voice talent and audio engineer, and I'll be joined by some of the industry's top professionals on both sides of the microphone to drill down and dig up the truth. Hello, welcome to episode 7 of the VO School podcast. Thank you for joining us. We're really motoring now, episode 7. And today we are talking about networking. And I wanted to get to this early on in the process because it's something you can and should be doing really from day one. There's no time to waste really when it comes to networking. Admittedly, you don't necessarily want to throw yourself out into the world and scream from the rooftops that you're a voice actor if you're not ready. Having said that, you can start making connections now and following people and getting to know the industry and the players. So this episode is devoted entirely to that, and we have 3 really great guests on this week, and they all live in LA. But networking is a big part of what they do in LA and why they went to LA, and they have some networking groups that they partake in and have set up themselves, so they're really the perfect people to talk to about this. So, before we get to the interview, a very short bit of housekeeping. Please connect with us on Facebook, on our group, and that can be found at facebook.com/groups/VO School Podcast. It's a really great place to talk about the subjects we talk about in the episode, and you can ask any other questions, feel free to. No question is too silly. Okay, maybe some questions are silly, but that's fine. You'll just embarrass yourself. Anyway, we also have a Twitter page, and that can be found at VO School Pro. And please continue to like and retweet and share and write reviews on iTunes and do all those things, because that is really, really helping get the word out and get us bumped up the rankings. I think that's how it works. I don't know. But it's really good for the podcast, and it'll enable us to keep going and cover everything eventually, however long that's going to take, probably a long time. So anyway, let's get straight to the bios and then the interview after this short break.
Style. Power.
You're watching the home of the NFL.
The all-new iPhone.
Reserve your Disney World season pass now.
Through all the runny noses, 3 in the morning coughs.
An all-new American Crime Story, tonight on FX.
Hi, it's J. Michael Collins, and these are just a few examples of the first-class demos my team and I are producing. If you'd like to have something similar, visit jmcvoiceover.com and click on the Demo Production tab to find out more.
Brad Venable has been a full-time voice actor for the past 9 years. Brad founded the voiceover education organisation Superhero University and is co-founder of VO Weekly Workout. Brad has voiced for Britta, Sonic Drive-Ins, Harley-Davidson, World of Warcraft Legion, Hearthstone, Dragon Ball Super and Hunter x Hunter. Jay Preston is a full-time LA-based voice actor. He is the founder of the VoiceOver Collective and co-founder of the Gardner Collective Workout Group and VO Weekly Workout. His clients include Realtor.com, McDonald's, Microsoft, Bud Light, Macaroni Grill, and many more. Tim Friedlander is a full-time LA-based voice actor and owner of Soundbox LA Recording Studio. He is the founder of the Gardner Street Workout Groups and co-founder of the Gardner Collective Workout Group and VO Weekly Workout. Tim has engineered for clients such as Backstage Magazine, Red Bull, Valvoline, and more. He is the voice of Motor Trend On Demand, Toymakers on the Velocity Network, and Evil Genius on the History Channel. Here's our interview with Brad Venable, Jay Preston, and Tim Friedlander. Okay, so this week we are talking networking with Tim Friedlander, Brad Venable, and Jay Preston. So, hello, everybody.
Hello, hello.
Hey,
Hi there.
Hey.
So does everyone want to do a quick intro to themselves, and then we can get on with the questions? How about that?
Sure. I'll give it a start. My name's Tim Friedlander. I'm based here in Los Angeles. Voice actor and studio owner, musician, etc.
Everything.
Yeah, everything.
Renaissance man. I'm Brad Venable. I'm a full-time voice actor and just started my foray into directing, not just guest directing, but I cast and directed a voiceover thing, which is about all I can talk about, unfortunately.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I moved to Glendale, Oklahoma. Wow. I'm from Oklahoma, and it's like, oh, I just visited Oklahoma, so now all of a sudden I'm talking about Oklahoma again. I live in Glendale, 16 months now from Dallas, and originally from Oklahoma, where there wasn't much of voiceover-related anything. But, yeah, I'm here now, and everything's pretty awesome, and I like being here.
Great.
And I'm Jay Preston, originally from New England area, Boston, and flew out here a little over 10 years ago. And 5 years ago, I started getting into voiceover because film was nothing like theater used to be, and VO is a lot more like theater. So I found my home again, and it's been going well. About almost 4 years now, full time.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks for coming on. So my first question here is how we define networking as it relates to the voice actor. So what does networking do for them exactly?
There's a lot of different things it can do, but I think one of the main things it does is get you out of your booth and get you out of that solo world that you kind of spend hours in. And then you can, because as far as I'm concerned, actors have like a bag full of tricks they can pull from. And if you don't get out there and interact with new people and make new friends, your bag of tricks kind of dwindles down. You got to refill it. So for me, that's one of the main purposes of networking is just to refill that bag of tricks. And then along the way, you might make a connection that could make you some money or just a great friend. So that's my take on it.
That's great. Yeah.
And it definitely gets you, there's nothing like actually being in front of somebody in person. As many times as you may talk with somebody, over Skype or over Badalgo or whatever it is that you're working on. There's nothing like meeting somebody in person and getting a chance to see somebody in the flesh and actually shake their hand and have a conversation with them that sticks. You stick in their mind and they stick in your mind, and that's the type of stuff that I think is really important, is to make those connections and keep those connections. And I've met some of my best friends that I've met in the last few years have been through voiceover networking. Jay and I met at a workout group one night about 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, and that's how I met Brad too.
Exactly,
networking in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh wow, that's great.
Yeah, it's part of the World Voices Convention. The second one of those, we were hanging out there for a while, and it was like, of course, I had to see Jay's hat because Jay has hats like he is like the Mad Hatter without the mad part. And so it was really great. We just sat down and chatted for a little bit. It was like, hey, it's really great to meet you in 3D and share a little bit of air.
Yeah.
Even though the air there was a little stagnant at times, but it wasn't any one of our faults.
It's still better than LA.
Oh, yeah, this is true.
Yeah. So, Brad, what does networking mean to you as a voice actor?
As a voice actor, I wouldn't have a career if it wasn't for networking, honestly. I mean, talent is talent. One of my dearest friend coaches that I've ever taken is Maurice Tobias. She said at a certain level that the talent is assumed, that if you walk into a room, you belong there, all that stuff. It's how you got to that room to begin with. And that's the thing. She's like, those things are assumed. You have to bring something unique to the table no matter what. And I just, some people get all over me for the aw shucks stuff that happens with me because, I literally am a farm boy who grew up in the middle of the sticks in Oklahoma and decided this was something I wanted to do. And, honestly, if it weren't for networking, I would have never gotten to voiceover, period.
Right.
Because I used to do crazy cartoon, bad impersonations of characters and people at frat parties to get free beer. Seriously. That's kind of how I got into VO.
Yeah.
That's a good origin story.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't have my career in voiceover if it weren't for networking. literally would not have a career. I was less than 8 hours away from quitting voiceover after having been doing voiceover for about 12 or 13 years and failing at it for that entire time. And I had tickets to go to Voice 2014, and I was lying in bed thinking about going, and I almost rolled over and went back to sleep. And instead, I got on my motorcycle, drove to Anaheim, and ended up hanging out in the hotel for 2 days. And the core of the people that I know in the LA community from voiceover, I met at that convention. And I met people that I didn't even know existed at that convention, and inspired me to get back into voiceover and actually try it as a legitimate career as opposed to a hobby. And I wouldn't be here without that.
So what is it about the networking then that sustained you and brought you back into the industry? Is it the camaraderie? Is it the connections? Is it, what is it exactly then?
I mean, for me, it was seeing other people who were failing exactly the same way that I was failing, and realizing that I wasn't alone. And I think part of that is just realizing that we're not alone in what we do. And it's so easy to get stuck in your booth, in your head all this time, thinking about all these things that you're failing at that everybody else is succeeding at. Mm-hmm. And it becomes very, it's so easy to get down and think that you're doing terrible, when in actuality, you're on par with what is happening in the industry. And it's hard, if you have nobody to see, you have no way to compare yourself to how everybody else is doing. And for me, at least, I assume that everybody's doing better than I am.
Yeah, it's easier to see that when everyone's status updates is booked another gig today, blah, 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 but you don't see the days where they're like, had a terrible day today,
Exactly.
You just see the highlights.
Yeah, that's a very true statement. And I don't even, I think family and stuff doesn't really understand a lot of, especially family that's not in the industry, will never understand all the hardships and all what networking involves. And, people think I'm just hanging out again, having a good time with a bunch of people. But it's actually part of the job that we have to go through in order to post that good thing.
Right.
Yes.
It's like, how many hundreds of dollars did you have to spend in order to hang out with that person at this particular gathering so that you could put a status update that looks like everything in the world is going perfect in your life?
Yeah. Carefully worded.
Yes, exactly. About the fifth edit on that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and a lot of people who are starting out in the industry don't realize how long it takes to get to that point where you're booking regularly.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It's a very long process.
It is.
Yeah, and many of them aren't patient enough to go through the process either. They just want to take the jump start, and that ends up always hurting people in the long run.
Yeah, that's kind of an old story in this industry, which is funny because that's only happened for the last 10 years or so. That it's like, hey, I joined the voiceover industry today. I bought a USB microphone and I have my MacBook and I'm going to use Audacity and I'm a professional because whatever, because it sounded like it was a really great idea. And it is. It's the best job on earth, for Pete's sake. Of course, everyone that loves their job thinks that.
Yeah.
But man, it's just, they need to understand there's a long process of cultivating relationships and cultivating job opportunities and all that stuff. And I'm in the same kind of boat as Tim. I went to Voice 2008 when I still lived in Oklahoma and flew to LA, and it was the first trip. And it was just like eyes as big as saucers, and it's like meeting people, heroes of mine like Bob Bergen, voice of Porky Pig, and all the organizers of everything. I met Pat Fraley, and all these people are like friends of mine now. They're they're not just mentors, they're friends. And that's a long process. I mean, that's almost 11 years. Almost 10 years rather. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. So now I want to go into the networking thing specifically, and I'm going to subdivide this into online networking and offline networking, or in-person networking. And I want to start with online networking. So in terms of how someone entering the industry approaches that, how does it work? Who do they approach? How do you go about reaching out to people?
I mean, that's the $1 million question right there.
Is.
I mean, that was part of my frustration back, before I started meeting anybody, is that you pick up the voiceover resource guide, or you go and Google voiceover, and you've got a million opportunities, a million resources. They all look the same. Where do you start? Who do you actually talk to? And in that sense, I think, at least for me, Facebook has been a huge part of that. And as much as it sucks up my time, it's also an amazing resource for that. in a way that can be you can cultivate friendships in a way on there that you can't with people you don't normally see in person. There's tons of people that I know on Facebook that I'll run into a convention and we're like, oh yeah, you're so and so. I'm like, oh yeah, you're Tim Friedlander, and they say, oh yeah, so how oh yeah, I saw you were on this trip last week, and you've already got something in common to talk about.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I know that there was, back in the early days of one of the pay-to-plays, they had a sponsored web forum. Like there were at one point 2 major web forums for voiceover. One was the Voiceover Savvy forums put on by Voice 123 at the time, and then the VOBB. And both of those places were, to me, prior to Facebook becoming kind of the end-all be-all hub for online networking, such as it is. Those were the places that I got to know those folks. And then whenever everything started kind of nudging and migrating a little bit to Facebook, and everyone started coming out of the woodwork and really like, oh, I do voiceover too. Well, that's great. Now we all have like a really centralized, tons of users, millions of users per day place. And that's pretty much it. It's like, once you start friending everybody in the world in the industry, I'm not saying that that's necessarily the best way to do it. I mean, I did for, when there wasn't, 50,000 people that do voiceover on Facebook that are in groups and stuff. I mean, a couple of hundred people at that time, about 10 years ago or so for me. And then it just kind of exploded. And that's those groups, I think, the groups within, like Voiceover Pros and some of the other prominent places, and the World Voices Organizations group and all that. Those were places that I'm going to get a chance to meet, quote unquote, air quotes, meet people. And that's gives you at least some semblance of a foundation when you finally meet them in 3D at a conference or at a get-together of some kind. Then all of a sudden, but the online thing was like the foundational thing.
Yeah,
it works in opposite ways, doesn't it? It's like yin and yang both ways. It's really cool.
Yeah. And my way was kind of a little opposite, because when I don't know anybody and I don't know who's giving me advice, I don't know if that's good advice or not. So I kind of steered. I was in those little some of the voice groups on Facebook in the beginning, but I didn't know whose advice was good or who was even giving me advice, or And then I started just taking classes all throughout LA, and I decided to do a class in almost every place that I possibly could. In every class, I met some people that were really talented, and I was like, they are going to make it. I want to be their friend, but I'm really bad at names, and I hate business cards. So the only way that I knew how to keep in contact with anybody was to create my own Facebook group of only people I've met and admire. Right. And that started with 5, 10, 15, and then a year went by and there was 50 of us, and then all of a sudden it became like a voiceover networking group that it grew and grew, and now there's almost 500 members, but it's all people I know or people that in the group were close friends. Like if Brad tells me, here are some people who are perfect for the group, I'll bring them into the group, then I'll meet them at the next get-together.
I did that 2 days ago.
Only do it that way. Yeah, you did, yeah. Can't wait to meet them.
They're great people, too.
But that's my take on it, was to only network with the people that I knew and that I trusted and that were my kind of people. And that's kind of how the VO Collective began, and how everything keeps evolving from there.
Yeah. So that is networking with voiceover peers. Is it possible then to extend that out to casting directors, agents, buyers, people like that?
Well, that's what I did with the group, is I brought in casting directors, agents, and all that into the group that I have also worked with and or met who would want to put their time aside for that kind of thing. So now I have a couple of my agents on there, some casting directors in there, and it's great because we get the feedback from people you wouldn't normally get the feedback from. So we have people, AAA list talent all the way down to just beginner with extreme potential. And then we have casting directors and everything, and then opportunities will arise. And then sometimes our clients will be like, we're in a bind, we need to cast this, and then we'll just use the collective to cast, so it casts itself sometimes.
Right.
And that extends, and Jay can speak this more than any of us, but that extends to LinkedIn, to Twitter, to Vimeo, to YouTube, to whatever other social platforms are out there. And I think Jay's booked on almost every other platform out there other than Facebook.
Yeah. There's the networking and where you try to book stuff too. You're networking with your clients, and that's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I do want to get to that actually about with the social media side, how you balance yourself and your personal side and your professional side. That's a difficult balance to maintain.
It is. I know for myself, I have a strictly business Facebook profile that I use that is just a voiceover and music recently. So it's been a little skewed music lately than it has been voiceover. But I don't discuss anything personal on there. I have a personal Facebook profile that I use that I've actually pretty much abandoned because most of my personal and professional life have become so melded into one that I use my voiceover profile on Facebook entirely. And to the point where I've abandoned my old friends on my other one.
They're dead to you now.
And all your new friends call you Tim Friedlander VO.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they all think my last name is VO.
Brad, what about you?
Oh, for me, I'm pretty much in the same boat as Tim. I have a professional page, and it's so funny because, what you see is what you get, for good or for ill with me. And so it ends up is that I kind of go in the opposite direction, though, is that I will share something that I think is interesting to people who are fans of voiceover, who actually are what, to even think that I have fans is kind of weird to me. I mean, I do enough stuff that, there is a fandom for people in the industry in certain genres, and one of those is anime dubbing, and I've got a little bit of a following with that. But I only post on that page for stuff like video game postmortems and stuff that's interesting to me, vinyl record collecting. And it's so funny how almost my personal page has become like more of my mental dump area, and everything on my professional page is all my real interests. It's so odd how I do that sometimes, but it's real easy to switch over from one interface to the other in Facebook and do it that way. As for my Twitter page, I basically I'm a curator mostly, and then every once in a while I'll share something that's interesting. I wrote a blog this past week, and it's weird because it's just one of those things that just kind of bam, it happened on a whim because somebody asked me for some advice, and so it's just kind of, I shared it in a couple of groups and it just went off. And I haven't even shared that on my professional page. I was just sharing that in groups. And so it's just weird how, everyone is like striving for the organic when it comes to online and social networking and stuff. And it's just like when they truly are organic, it's very apparent when they are. But right. I love sharing stuff. I do, because I'm a big nerd, and I'm a nerd in a lot of ways. I mean, people are geeking out for everything on earth nowadays, and now it's just like, well, you pretty much know that you're going to be hearing about music or, video game and board game design, ludology, if you really want to get to the Latin of the word. That's all that shows up on my business page. But everything else is just like Brad's mental dump. Here's everything.
Well, I think we're at a place now on social media where you can combine your personal and professional in a way that makes sense, because even if you have professional relationships, people are fully aware that everyone is an interesting, nuanced person, and they bring a lot of different things to the table. So what I want to look at now is your social media clout, for want of a better word, that's being more and more looked at from a buyer's perspective, or from like studios and things like that. Do you pay attention to those kind of things?
Jay?
It depends on who you are and what you mean by the clout and what department, because there's Twitter followers who, I think, if you are doing dubbing or video games and you're a main character in something, you start gaining all these followers, and then more video game companies will look at you as if, okay, if I bring him into the game, I sell X many systems through having this voice actor, that voice actor. Right. And some people look at you that way. Or if you go on IMDb, there's animated people who'll be like, well, what has he done? Has he been in a show? And can he uphold it? What's his IMDb level at, or whatever they call it.
Star meter. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And, so there's a lot of different versions of it. And then there's, I built this network, but only the people in the voiceover community kind of know of me and what I do based on my network and my social media, like postings or whatever. So it's a lot of different worlds. Like, I don't have that many followers on Twitter as compared to somebody like, Yuri Lowenthal or something like that. I think Brad might have more than both of me in combined.
I don't know about that.
But you've done more video games and more animation.
That's true. I think a lot of my followers ended up being by association more than it was anything, because I have a lot of friends, and there's a sordid side to that too, where in the anime world especially, there are tons of fans, and there are some rabid fans, and there are some rabid fans that do things that aren't really very nice. Yeah, and they will go if they try to impersonate some of these poor ladies that are so really wonderfully and talented on Twitter and Facebook and stuff, and they'll friend people who are friends of theirs in order to like impersonate or get close to them or something. It's just weird sometimes. Yeah, that's an odd thing, but yeah, the number of followers is probably only by association with me.
Have you had anyone, question that, from like buyers, people you've worked with, they ask that of you?
I think it happened one time, once, and that was when I was still in Dallas, and there was kind of a general, I guess, a grand experiment, if you will, of, trying to bring in, so-and-so has 28,000 viewers or has 28,000 followers and 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. And why don't we bring them in? And that means we're guaranteed to have them as an audience. And I don't think it quite worked the way they expected it. I'm not saying it was a failure by any stretch, because that would be wrong to even think it's a failure per se. It's just another way of trying to, bolster that viewer bottom line or whatever. But it's funny. I took a little Meet the Pros thing, like, speaking of the in-person networking, just I want to say 8 or 9 weeks ago, and one of the Lucasfilm folks, and she said, someone invariably brought up that question, and she said, "Who has time for that?" And it's like, who has time to check every person that sends you an audition? And sometimes you get 300 and 400 auditions for the same role. Who's going to do that? Who would torture their interns that way? Right. So I don't know. I think that there's a place for it. Not saying that I agree that it is. I think it exists, but I'm not seeing it myself.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. There seemed to be like a trend of auditions coming out that was saying they wanted 40,000 or more Twitter followers, but I haven't seen anything like that in the most of this year. It seemed like it was really popular for a few months or maybe a year or so, but then it's, at least in the stuff that I've been seeing this year, I haven't seen that requested.
I didn't even see that 40,000 thing at all. So so maybe that's just in the last little bit.
It's only been a couple.
Cool. And I also haven't been trying to force it. Like it'd be nice to have a lot of followers and then have that ability, but when the time comes, then I think that'll happen for me when, because if I had that many and I was in demand at the moment in the way that my life is going, I wouldn't be able to do half the traveling I That's true. Half the living. So I think it all comes in time, and if you're trying to rush something, it's probably the wrong path. Right. Don't run your path, just walk it.
Yeah.
So I want to bring it back now to voice actors' first sort of tentative steps into the sort of online networking thing, and social media is such a big part of that. So where should they focus their efforts, do you think?
Man, that is, it's kind of, that is a tough question. It to me, I feel like the online and the offline world kind of go hand in hand, and that you need to find out who is in your area locally and allow that to kind of branch out as well. The online stuff is great, but it's also, it's very easy. And I think we've all seen this, to have new people pop up in a group and all of a sudden start asking them, a million questions, which questions aren't bad by any means, but a million questions that have already been answered in this group. And they can do if you do a search, a lot of times people say, hey, just, go search this for this forum for the question, and they'll pop up and they'll be really active for a couple or 3 weeks and then they disappear.
Right.
And I think it's being aware twofold that it's a long-term thing. You're not going to get in. I'm not going to say never, but the chances of you getting in and being hugely successful within the first 6 months or a year are very slim. And you got to look at the long term. You got to look at, I always say it's playing the long game, is that I'm looking down the road 3, 4, 5 years from where I am now, and looking that far ahead to try and establish what I want to do, as opposed to saying, okay, well, if I don't make something in the next 6 months, then I'm just going to give this up. You're not going to make it in, and again, I'd say, never say never, but the chances of you making it in 6 months to a point where you can support yourself and have an established career in voiceover is very slim.
Right. I agree. 100%.
I'm not sure that answered the question, but I guess the place to start is, find other people who are doing what you do and see what they're involved in, and branch out from there, and you'll meet somebody in a different group that says, hey, you should come check out this group over here. You go to that group and you may find a group that you really connect with and people that you really find that you really have something in common with. And, just because it's a Facebook group that says, has whatever in its name doesn't mean it's the right group for you. Same thing with coaches or with anybody that you work with. Because somebody says it's great doesn't mean it's the right one for you.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how to follow that. That's really good information. Thanks for the advice, Tim. I'll totally use that.
Yeah. We're all taking notes. Yeah. So while we're on the subject, why don't we finish off the online section by talking about your VO weekly workout?
Yeah, sure. That's kind of an extension of, I guess we'll back up a little bit to what Jay and I have been doing, and then what Brad came and joined us about, when he came to LA a year ago. That Jay and I started a workout group in LA specifically because I didn't know anything. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who to coach with. I didn't know where the casting directdirectors were. And instead of trying to go through the voiceover resource guide and start working with everybody, I just started. I have a studio at my place in LA, and I started inviting people over once a week just to get on the mic and do voiceover. And we started talking, and we started doing a weekly workout that's been going on for 3 years. Jay and I kind of partnered up 2 years ago to start doing more of a guest director night and bringing in coaches that we like to work with. And we would post about that on the VO Collective and on my Gardner Street page on Facebook. And we got lots of requests for, man, it's really cool. I wish I was in LA for this opportunity. I wish I was in, I wish I wasn't in Ohio for this opportunity. I'd love to go work with that person. So for the last year or so, we've been contemplating how to take what we do in LA and make it virtual so that we could give people around the world an opportunity to work with these coaches and these casting directors and these agents that we get access to in Los Angeles, or you get access to in New York, because that's where a lot of them are based.
Yeah.
And it had been in the thought process for a while, and then with some of the dramatic changes that happened in the last couple of months in the industry, we decided that it was a good time for us to jump on this and provide an opportunity for people who were not going to be happy with some of the options that were currently out there.
Right.
Yeah, right. And the other part is when we all started, at least the three of us, we had no money.
Right.
Zero money. So in order to do any of the really nice $300 workshops, $400, $300, $250 workshops, you'd have to save up, and then that would be a big chunk of wait and table money to do that workshop. And you kind of need to do these kind of workshops consistently to really start making a connection with somebody. So it's hard to do when they're that expensive. So through a group that's private, you can kind of offer them in a cheaper discount. You work it out, not a discount, but a cheaper rate, because you start making friends with the directors and the producers. And it's like, how do we offer that to the world, a cheaper way to get some feedback from somebody who they normally would cost $300 something for? Yeah. And so that's where this came in. So it's only $10 every time you want to do it. And
that's great.
Anyone can throw out $10, and then you get feedback from those people, but also you get to listen to other people, what their home stuff sounds like, and how their delivery is, and that's the most valuable part, is getting to hear all of your peers, up to 100 of them, and what does that sound like, and how did they do that, and what feedback did I want, who got that, and what did they do, and then you get to do all that kind of stuff, and it's kind of what's overlooked in that kind of workshop. They're just looking at me. What did my feedback look at? Yeah, and to piggyback on that, I mean, some of the great weekend workout, workshop, seminar, whatever you want to call it today, the best thing that I ever got out of some of them was getting direction to other people that I could sit back with an objective eye and go, okay, I like that choice. I didn't like that choice. Oh, but the director did. Oh, so there's this whole idea of trying to figure out what your audience of one really likes and cater your performance to that. And then,
utilizing the things that the guys have already talked about today. I mean, hearing all of those things that you can do in the comfort of your own home, as opposed to, oh my gosh, I got to be on my best behavior and look good and all this other stuff in person. No, you can sit there in your pajamas and, just write notes to yourself, or, that the thing that I think that our workouts greatly benefit is that you get all of the benefits of one of those weekend workouts with a $10 paywall, and you get not only your own feedback, but the feedback to up to 100 of your colleagues. Yeah. And like they said, getting to hear what their sound sounds like. And if there was an actual note about that, it's like, I didn't particularly think that sounded very good, or I loved the way that sounded. But then hearing that, yes, that making that connection that particular director doesn't really care so much about audio quality, more as they care about the acting quality on the actual audition, or the other way around. I mean, it's crazy what you can learn in just the span of a week.
And it's crazy what you can learn when you're paying attention to other people in the booth, other people who are doing, who are doing what you're doing. I mean, the best. I come from education, and so I'm a big advocate of really paying attention to what else is happening when you're not the one who's the center of attention in the booth, or the one who's the one getting the direction. And then this is one thing, Jay, whenever we start our workouts, Jay has a little introduction that he does, which goes something like this. What is it, Jay?
Oh, I forget the introduction. I do.
It's about, when you're here, once somebody's in the booth, turn your script over, turn your phone off unless you're taking notes on it, and pay attention to what's happening in the booth.
Oh, yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I say.
Yeah, exactly. Almost word for word.
Yeah.
And so the same thing goes for the online workouts, like take the time to go listen to everybody else, whether it's our workout or another online workout or anything that you're involved in. Take the time to hear what other people are doing.
Yeah, it sounds like almost an internship or something like that, where you're sort of sitting at the back of the room witnessing it, but you also get your opportunity to do it yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's a great resource. So everyone should jump on that, I think. Before we get to in-person networking, I think there's a sort of middle or third networking type that we could explore here. And I'm interested in whether or not any of you have actually done it. And that's cold calling. I haven't. I'll put that out there straight away. Has anyone else? Does anyone else employ that?
I have. I go in fits and spurts on that one. I'll do it. I've tried. It's one of those things that I think you have to be aware of when you're doing it and how you're doing it. So I think it was last year, there was a big discussion on Facebook about using a particular database to start calling people. Right. And I called the first person on the list because that's where you start, and he chewed me out on the phone. He's like, why are you calling? You're the 25th voiceover person to call me today. Why is everybody on voiceover calling me? So, if don't jump on this when everybody else is jumping on it. You have to be strategic about it. And the same thing with, some of the changes that happened with the online casting and some of the things that happened the last couple of months, the day that things changed, all of a sudden everybody was reaching out and started to call agents, started calling clients, and clients were like, whoa, back off. Like, this is not the right time to be doing it. So I guess my advice is do it strategically and don't be afraid to do it. I've never, except for that one time, and that literally was my very first cold call that I ever made. But except for that one time, I have never had a single person upset or even annoyed that I had called.
Right.
I've never tried it.
Yeah.
I know enough, having worked inside sales before.
Right.
I know I never want to do that again, to be perfectly honest. Right. And it's not for any other reason than I have to go in, and in those situations, and I'm sure that a lot of people that do this, they don't go through the, I guess, for lack of a better way of saying it, online stalking method of learning about the people they're about to call, at least to a degree, where they can have a touchstone with that person. So I know it was like all about volume when I worked in inside sales. And to me, that just turned me off from the idea. I mean, no matter how good my personality is, as soon as you start calling and start with the probing questions and all that other stuff, and then all of a sudden turn on the sales part, it was just, man, it was soul crushing at times. Now, I mean, it's one thing to have like that warm lead, to use the buzzword, to have somebody, to go to an event and then follow up with them. To me, it's not cold at that point. So yeah, it's a completely different thing. But to me, that's the only time I would ever do it, because otherwise, this is a small industry. No matter how many hundreds of thousands of people say they're in it or actually are in it. I mean, there's some people that I've just, taken classes in the last few weeks here that said, yeah, this is a very, very tiny industry. And the last thing you want to do is to annoy someone to the point of they have lunch with somebody and it's like, oh yeah, you've been hearing a call from this such and such person. Yeah, I'll never talk to them again. Right. I don't want that to happen at all.
Right.
Yeah. I'm just horrified when anyone calls me, frankly.
Yeah. I think I'm not a huge, it's just personally from my choice, I'm not a huge fan of that, but I think it's important that when you do those things is that you don't approach it from any kind of sense of desperation of like, okay, well, I have to get this person to like me. You have to call, you have to know that you have a product or a service that you can provide to somebody and that you can help them out. You're calling somebody to offer them something to help them. And if you can approach it from that way, you're more, I think you're more likely to get a positive response as opposed to, hey, I'd really like to work with you guys, and I think I'm really trying to break into the industry, and I would really love it if you could help me out, and I'll do something for free, even if you want me to do it for free.
Oh boy,
if you come across as desperate, it's not, but that goes for anything you do. I think if you approach anybody out of desperation, you can tell, people can tell, and I think it puts you in a position of not having the power over your career the way that you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. So now I want to transfer that to in-person networking. So what kind of in-person networking events are there for voiceover people?
There's a lot of them.
There's a lot of them.
This is long and distinguished.
From just simply going to a workshop or a class, that's one form of it. And then they have all these seminars now and all these conventions and I tell you, there's so many ways to get out there, and some of them come to your town, or some of them will you can even ask the college you went to create one, and that'll happen that way. And then all these groups have their own get-togethers. We do one every month. There's another one that does one every 2 months. So there's just endless opportunities, and you can create your own. A lot of people are so want to get in a group to go do a thing, and I'm like, just create your own. And then once you're the leader of that group and it grows, we can join up and we can all meet, at that point down the road.
I agree. I mean, there's nobody saying you can't start your own group unless you're the only person in your town doing what you do. But then that's where the virtual stuff comes into play. I mean, there's no reason that you have to be isolated in this industry, regardless of where you are. You may not get the FaceTime that you get if you're in a larger town where there's a bigger community, but there's no reason why you can't create your own community, which is what, Jay and I did here in LA, purely out of the fact that I did it because I just didn't know anybody else. I did it out of stupidity, I guess, ignorance of what else was out there. I didn't know the industry. And instead of trying to figure out how to get into it, I just brought a bunch of people together that none of us knew the industry.
And how does networking with your peers benefit your career other than camaraderie?
The tricky thing is to not expect it to or want it to help your career.
Yeah, right.
Like just hanging out and talking about what you've been up to. Never think, I hope he asks me hope he pitches me to whoever he's, like if you think that way, then they're not really your friends or peers and you're just trying to use people. But it can happen. The more that you're, whoever's on the top of my mind, let's say there's 500 people in this group I have, whoever's the most active, just by being nice and just by being active in themselves, they're always on the top of my mind. And when a casting opportunity comes around where I can suggest somebody to something, or if a client needs something right away, I think of the people on the top of my mind, not the ones I brought in 3 months ago who aren't active. Like I forget that they're even around because they're not continually active, and I don't see them at the get-togethers. So just being around the people that you want to work with, you just get to work with them more.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. I mean, we work in isolation booths. So if we don't want to be isolated, we should leave those booths. You know? And so really, whenever I moved here just, a little over a year ago, it was like, holy crap, I have all the opportunities a person could ever want to network in this industry. I mean, it is going to be the place I'm going to work and live. So of course I'm going to do that. And I think that was one of the hallmarks of my success being here. I kind of brag about it a little bit. It's like I've gone to a class or an event or a networking get together or something every single week since I've been here. Mm-hmm. Now, is that overkill? Probably. Probably. Yeah. But, it's just like Jay was saying, I put up a casting call for, a client that I've been working with off and on for 3 or 4 years, and they've got a big project and they want multiple voices for this and all this other stuff. And I was like, collective, first thought. Mm-hmm. I reached out to about half a dozen people right off the top of my head that I thought had the variety to do, the versatility rather, to do multiple characters. And then I reached out to the group en masse, and that's how it ended up working. I mean, I guarantee you, I was a little more scrutinizing to the people that I didn't know very well or hadn't even met, because some of them, these are all people that know Jay, not necessarily that know me. Right. So that it's definitely to dovetail on what he said was it's there are some people that are your top of mind, and they're not trying to. It's that reeking of desperation kind of thing that you were talking about, Tim, was, you can smell it through the phone. It's that's the, I'm not trying to badmouth cold calling again, but that was, it's whenever you don't approach it the right way, it's the same thing in all networking. If you're approaching it for, this is going to get me work, as opposed to, sure, I'm going to go to so-and-so's birthday party because I haven't seen them in 3 months. Right. And the time is flying when you're head down and you're working and stuff, which is wonderful. But then it's also like, oh man, it's a drag. It's like tonight I'm going to, come in and do the guest workout today with JJ Juergens here at Tim's place. And it's wonderful because I'm going to see people I haven't seen in 3 or 4 months. Yeah. And the last time I saw JJ, she and I are at the same agency. The last time I saw her was with a partner read. So it's like, I'd love to get a chance to read for her because, in her other life, she does this thing. And so anyway, I'm rattling, but that the idea is that there is in your place, if you don't have a group, like the guys have been saying, do it, just get outside of your booth and quit being isolated.
I think a lot of people who are going to be listening to this are going to be filled with horror at walking into a room of people that they don't know and having to network, So why don't we talk about exactly what that process is like, the right mindset to be in, and what you can expect from that?
I just talked to somebody. I had this conversation with somebody a couple days ago and about networking, and she's like, God, I hate going in someplace and having to suck up to people. And I'm like, no, that's not at all what you're doing. Mm-hmm. You're going someplace to make friends. Yep. And if you go someplace and see people who are doing what you're doing and make friends with them, then all of a sudden you're friends with somebody and you have something in common. And then, oh yeah, by the way, I happen to do voiceover also because we're at a voiceover thing. Right. And all of a sudden you have a way to connect with them that is not superficial and that is something that is going to have deeper connections.
Right.
And also keep in mind when you do these networking things, most of them are actors networking. So that's where it gets kind of annoying when you go in at it thinking you're going to meet a casting director or an agent. You probably won't meet them. Mm-hmm. It's all just actors networking. And so don't go thinking that, I got to meet the right person. I got to meet the right person's in here somewhere. And then if you're one of those people from the middle of the country who are just overly nice, you're going to be stuck talking to one person for the whole networking event.
Sorry.
No, it's just, I've come to learn that the middle of the country is just so nice, and they just talk, and they just, the East Coasters, stop. I come into networking events, and I'm like, blah, 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 talk, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to go talk to these guys now, and I'll just cut you right off, and I'll go talk to somebody else, because I only have 2 hours to try to meet as many people as I can, and it's just be yourself and be friendly. You don't have to try. And and as soon as you start trying, you start hating it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because we were talking about, my thing is I'm a big nerd about everything, and we all tend to geek out about things that we're passionate about. Well, one thing about VO that you can hold, you can hang your hat on here is that we're all geeks about VO. I mean, if we if we're not talking shop about something, it's gonna be talking about gear, or it's gonna be talking about whose class are you taking, or all this other stuff, and everyone just shares. It's not like that typical, I guess, stereotypical, let's see what we see in movies and on TV about how everyone in the world in acting hates each other, which is not true at all, especially in voiceover. Especially in voiceover. Jeez, everyone is nice. I mean, there's like maybe 2 or 3 people that I wouldn't want to talk to, and that's about it.
And it's genuinely nice. I mean, it is genuinely nice. It's years later where you're waiting for it to change, and it hasn't changed. No. And the people are like, coming into this, and they come and hang out for a couple classes, or they go to a couple meetups, and they're like, okay, well, everybody's really nice. When do they all start becoming jerks? I'm like, no, it doesn't. I think we talk about this a lot. It's like, I have no idea why we're all so nice. I
don't either, really. I guess it's just that it's
true
that everyone is really just, we all love it so much.
Yeah.
I don't know if that pay it forward thing, as cliche as that sounds, that's what it is. But, the rising tide lifting all boats. I mean, honestly, why voiceover as opposed to any other creative endeavor? God knows the art world isn't like that, right?
Yeah, no. And there's just so much work that you can do,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of being jerks, I'm going to be one myself, because I came up with a thing this afternoon, and I thought, okay, I'm going to put these guys on the spot and see how they.
Look out!
So I've got a scenario here, and I want to see how you guys would play it. So let's imagine that you're at a barbecue and a friend beckons you over, and they introduce you to a network executive at NBC. How do you play that, Tim?
I mean, that's a great question. It's, I guess, talk about the food. I don't know. It's, I guess it's
because you don't have a time to think about it. We've got to just sort of spontaneously
say, hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you, and talk about anything except for voiceover, anything that doesn't have anything to do with NBC or with the network or anything like that. Or if you have a connection with say oh, it's great, you're at that network, I have so and so, I know this person's over there, that's great. You have some kind of connection with them. Or if you're if you're really awkward, you just kind of shake their hands and walk away. That doesn't get you anything. I guess it's just forgetting that they're somebody, an executive at NBC, and just talking to them as like they're a person.
Yeah.
And chatting with them about what they do, whether that's NBC or not, and talking to them about, hey, how do you know the birthday person here? Or how do you know the barbecue person? What are you doing here? Oh, that's really cool. I like to, ride motorcycles too. Oh, that's awesome. Talk about that. And then at some point, if you talk with somebody long enough, they're going to ask you what you do.
Right.
Yeah. And you say, oh, well, I do voiceover and I do this. And you tell a little bit about what you do. And they're going to say, oh, well, that's great. And if things work out well, then they say, oh, well, that's great. Here, here's my card. Shoot me your demo in the morning, and we'll chat. And you go, hey, great. It's great talking to you about Harleys, and I'll shoot you an email tomorrow.
Great. I'm so sorry I dropped that on you without any warning, but I wanted to see what your reaction was going to be. So, Brad, what's yours?
Tim took my answer.
Okay,
seriously though,
I figured it would be a similar.
No, it's going to be very, very close to that. I mean, I think the first thing I would do if it was, well, first off, if it's a network exec at NBC, then obviously we're not in LA. We're more likely in New York, because that seems to be where. Although I've met some really awesome NBC folks here, and so I've already got an idea of, it's like, okay, the question I need to ask myself, and if I'm going to be the cold calculating douchey person, is why are they here? But I'm genuinely interested in people in general. I am from the South. I do care, and I could talk to somebody for 3 hours given the chance. Thanks, Jay. You outed me. But to be fair, I would say, well, so, if it's so-and-so's party, how do you know so-and-so? Yeah. Do you guys work together much? Awesome. Well, I'm sorry, I was just over there talking to so-and-so about a record I just bought, and, give them something to throw them a line, something to talk about that isn't about voiceover or work in general. I want to know why they're there, because obviously they know somebody well enough to be at a social function with the possibility that other VO people than the person they know is going to be there. Yeah. So that's brave on their part already, to be perfectly honest. But it's going to be very similar to the way Tim was talking about. That scenario is almost verbatim, pretty much the way I would. Maybe not in the same order or something, but just I'm not desperate, and I don't feel that. And I think that there's that as a person matures in their career, they learn that. I mean, they're hearing, anyone that's listening to the podcast is going to hear that coming from all three of our mouths, which is wonderful because that means that there's something right. It's like there's no one way to success, or there's no way to screw everything up. But the things that overlap in lives, in the careers of people that are working and are successful, those tend to be the truisms of the industry.
Yes.
Yeah. So. I would do it the same way, pretty much. Just get to know them on a personal level. Know that so and so is not just a producer director at for promo at NBC, but they also do this. They also know whatever. Right. And it gives you a neat touchstone, and all of a sudden you become piqued in interest of the thing that they're interested in. Not just because that's a person that I could learn more about this stuff and then get to know them because we have a commonality. More like I'm truly interested in the fact that so and so's talking about cryptocurrency and other stuff. It's like, you don't know what comes up at the barbecue other than the ribs and the brisket,
Yeah. And Jay, presumably similar thing?
Kinda, yeah, but I'm more of a riffer off of whatever people say. I don't have things to say, so what if they said something, I'd just improv something off of that. I don't know, because I'm not much for like hanging around and keep talking, because I can very much sense when somebody's done talking with you. Yeah. And I always go for more wine.
That's a skill.
I was waiting for the wine to show up.
Yeah.
Well, it's an industry that's built on relationships anyway, isn't it? Because, when you're in the studio, whether you're in a meeting, people want to work with people they like being around. So I was really hoping that this was the answer that was going to come back, and I was confident that it was, because I think a lot of people go into networking events. I've been to so many where people are just, within 1 second, they're firing a business card in your face and they're saying, I do this, I do that, I do this.
It's also important to note that, short and sweet, like leave an impression. And then the part of the leave an impression that people forget is the leave part.
Yes.
So if you get a good laugh, it's like when you're on stage, if you get a good laugh, find an exit, and then that was a good impression and you've left it with them. If they want a business card, they're going to come find you at the party and be like, wow, that guy was fun. And now I'm not having fun anymore. I'm going to go find that guy, and that's what you kind of want them to, you want them to ask for the business card. Don't give it to them, and don't continually wait for an opportunity to mention you're a voice actor, because they know that.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I think we've covered most of my questions. So does anyone have anything else they want to say before we wrap up here?
I just would just go back to this idea of, with the cold calling and networking is just, even if you're brand new at this, or you're really far in your career, desperation comes through, and it's so hard for any of us to go out there sometimes, especially when you're having a bad day, or you haven't been booking for a little while, or you feel like all your friends are doing great on Facebook or whatever it might be. Right. To go out there and be desperate. And even if you're just starting, have a sense of professionality to you. It may not be where you want to be, but you may not be at this moment where you want to be, but look at where you want to be in 5 years, or know somebody who is doing what you want to do, and figure out a way to be that professional person now, regardless of your experience. Be professional, be nice, don't be a jerk.
Right.
And people like to work with people that they like.
Absolutely. It's funny, like, not to get really philosophical here, but, Napoleon Hill, who wrote all the, Think and Be Rich, and all the, the how to succeed in life without really trying, but really trying kind of thing. He always said that, set a date on the stuff that you want to do. Like, like Tim was saying, 5 years down the road, in 5 years, I want to be here. Well, that's a dream with a deadline. That makes it a goal. That's what he always said. A goal is a dream with a deadline. And that's something I've been, I've held on to it for a long, long time. And having that seeing the big picture and working backwards. In fact, that's another thing that I've learned is a really great thing. So you want to be in an animated series that has toys for Nickelodeon or for Dream or whatever. Just pick a company, and it's like, okay, how do you get on that show? Okay, this person submits to these people, and so you need to be able to have an audition that doesn't suck, that gets in front of this person that's going to submit it to these people. Okay, well, how do you get to that person? And work backwards, incrementally to the point where, okay, I literally know every single step that I need to take in order to be ready when that opportunity comes.
Yes.
Right.
All of a sudden, bam, you're there.
And be prepared to be ready when that opportunity shows up. People have to know you to want to work with you. And if they don't know you, they're not going to hire you. Network, make groups in your own town.
Mm-hmm.
Go to the online workouts at our voweeklyworkout.com and sign up for that. Get heard by people so that you're not just sitting in your booth by yourself all the time.
Yeah.
Because chances are people in this world, they're going to get to know your name before they know your face or even know anything about you. And let your performances in those workout opportunities and all, let those things come out.
Right.
Don't fake it.
That's great. Jay, any last words?
No, these guys covered everything.
Wine.
Good.
Wine.
Also, have fun in life.
Yes.
And networking, as far as all that networking, auditioning, doing your job, that's great. But also don't forget to go on an adventure and have fun and live life and go do fun things that have no job relation so that you can then, when you get to a networking event, have something to talk about that you've been doing that isn't work.
Right.
I swear,
experience, huh?
I make way more better impressions when I can talk about where I've been recently than when I've been talking about what video game I've been playing. That was a different part of my life. I still play them, but I adventure way more now, and it's way more fun to have that to talk about rather than work and this and that. And then they get to really see the real you and that conversational thing everyone's looking for. They'll be like, he's a really good conversationalist.
That's wonderful. All right, so that's a great way to end it. So before we finish, how do people get in contact with you guys if they want to find out more?
The best thing, we're all connected through the voweeklyworkout.com.
Yeah, there's a link to everything right there.
Yep. And they can contact all of us.
Yep. And your social?
Facebook, email, just start Googling our names, Tim Friedlander, Brad Venable, Jay Preston.
Yep.
We're all over the place. And you can find us. And, we're, at least for myself, I won't speak to anybody else here, but I'm always happy to answer questions. If people email me and send me stuff, I'm totally fine with that. I love to answer questions. I love to teach. Yep. I love to share what I've learned over the years.
Yeah, and one of the cool things about the voweeklyworkout.com thing is there's a little Talk to Us Now button, and that hits up all three of us. So you can literally immediately contact us, and hopefully one of us will respond right away. And then you scroll to the bottom of that, and there's a link to all three of our websites, and in the websites, links to all of our social media. So you can find us nice and easy.
Great.
The one-stop shop. What can we say?
For sure.
Awesome. Well, Tim, Brad, Jay, thanks so much for coming on. Really great chat.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie.
Okay, big thanks to Brad, Jay, and Tim for coming on there, bringing their extensive knowledge and experience to the podcast, so thank you for that. There's a lot to take away from that, so I'm not going to summarize it all here, but basically there's no excuse to not launch into networking right now, whether you're on the edges of the country, the middle of the country, or a different country, so go forth and network. I reached out on social media the other day and I asked what subjects you would like to hear about in the upcoming episodes. I've got a big long list and a syllabus that I'm working my way through, but I wanted to get some direct feedback from you to find out what's most pressing for you. And one thing that came back and seems like a sensible thing is that we should delve into the more business side, be that tax, liability, and that rather boring stuff. So I'm going to do my best to bring on a couple of guests who will add a bit of levity to that subject, and hopefully you won't fall asleep. Maybe you could use it if you've got insomnia, that episode, but I think it should be a good one. I've got a couple of people in mind, so I will give you more information about that as and when that is firmed up. But until then, I will see you next time. Thanks very much for listening. Thank you to this week's guests Tim Friedlander, Brad Venable and Jay Preston. Thanks also to J. Michael Collins and Backstage Magazine. Join us next week for another class.